Welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell, and we are reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell and turn on your notifications so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and X. Also, the audio versions are always found on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat, it's probably because you are subscribed, you've hit the notification bell, and turned those notifications on. So, when sharing with your friends, be sure to let them know. We also love to hear from you outside of our live show. Email us at jonnydelsfootballacademy@gmail.com, and you can always check out the website jfa49.com, as it is the most fun way to support the channel. Also, the way we boost the chat and boost the algorithm is to type out hashtag JD49.
Well, good evening, Niner faithful. You know the drill. Mr. Adam isn't here. Give us a mic check in the chat real quick. Make sure that I'm coming through this mic. It says I am, but you know how it is. Sometimes I'm not. But we are here live from day 2 of the Senior Bowl. It was a long day. I'm a little tired. A lot of sun. I'm not as sunburned as I look. The red of my sweater is making me look a lot more sunburned than I actually am. But big shout out to everybody in the chat who has checked in. Quiffle says we sound good. So thank you for the mic check here. I will agree with Jake, who says, let's go get Jim Schwartz. You know, one of the big pieces of news coming out from today was that the Browns have hired Todd Monken as their new head coach. And reportedly, this has made Jim Schwartz rather upset that he was passed over. And so I will be surprised now if Jim Schwartz stays in Cleveland. I do believe that they don't want to let him go, but it is what it is. Yes, I didn't put any sunscreen on, but I'm honestly, I'm not as red as this looks. Something about the lighting with the red hoodie makes me look like I'm really sunburned here, but I'm not. It also is. I was in the sun for 4 hours today. Now I was also trying to get shaded whenever I could. But these practices are a long time. Went to the media day this morning, which was really great to meet some players, talk to some players in a much more relaxed atmosphere where you're not rushed. You know, after the practices, they give you 10 minutes to go down on the field and meet with players. And a lot of times I'll go down there and there's sometimes you don't even get a chance to ask a guy because there's 5 people lined up and 2 guys take 5 minutes each with a prospect. And so you end up sitting there not able to get to the guy you really wanted to ask questions of, but was able to talk with a few guys or be at the podiums. That they had a 3-panel podium that with guys in a mic, and they were rotating players in and out through that. And then you could also talk to players aside from that. And so we'll talk about a couple of those guys here. Shout out to Terrera Dome. He's in the chat. He's a legend. Good to see you here. But we're going to dive into it. Some players that felt like really stood out again, or for the first time, or continue to build on a solid performance yesterday, but then really stood out today. Especially in positions where the 49ers, I think, are going to look to add in this draft. That's always key. You know, if it's a position that I don't think they're going to really add a lot to, like quarterback, then there's not a lot of, data to really gather there. The quarterbacks play or what they will, but the 49ers are not going to be picking one within the first 6 picks in the draft. They have Curtis Rourke, which they really like. They still have Mac Jones under contract. I do believe he gets traded, but Brock Purdy's obviously the guy. So they're not going to invest a lot into that. They're not looking at necessarily at replacing Kyle Juszczyk yet. I think he's still got a lot of tread left on the tire, and they're going to be continuing to look at him. They're not looking at these kind of specialist fullback types that would be there. They're not really looking at Mike linebackers. I do wonder if they bring somebody in to be some competition there for Tatum Bethune as the primary backup. I don't think Tatum played well enough last year, but he's also got room to grow. So I'm not looking really strong at the Mikes, but I do wonder if they bring in more competition at will. There's uncertainty around Nick Martin's future. He's gone 2 months now. He's been in the concussion protocol. You really have to worry about him as a person, and what his future in the NFL looks like. I will get Terry. Yes, we actually did. It was during the American team defensive O-line, D-line one-on-ones. We moved, and by we, I mean myself. Steph Sanchez is here. She's doing a great job. Always fun to hang out with Steph. Wayne Breezy made it down. His flight was canceled because of the snowstorms. He made it down today or late last night. Came in today. We connected at media day and then at the Senior Bowl. So we all moved over to watch the lineman one-on-ones over in that end zone. And we turned around and Steph, she knows everybody in the 49ers front office, personnel, everything. So she spots these people like crazy. She's the eagle eye. She was like, "Hey, that's one of their scouts in the hat." She told me what hat it was, and he was 2 rows behind us, watching the lineman from that side. So did see the 49ers scouts there. There was another guy. I took a picture of him. I'm not sure who he is. We couldn't get a good view of his face. He was wearing a Faithful to the Bay jacket, and he was down with the personnel. So I'm pretty sure that was somebody with the 49ers. But yeah, there is a number of 49ers personnel here. Saw a guy in the media day, but didn't get a chance to talk to him. He was moving to the formal interview area. Which did talk to a couple players about their formal interviews, because there's informal interviews and there's formal interviews. Every player has an informal interview with the teams here at the Senior Bowl. That they do that to update contact information. Then there are some formal requested interviews. That's going to be where guys go into the meeting room. So we walked past it. That's the first time that we had been in that area where the teams have their meeting rooms, and all of them had their doors open. So you were literally walking by and seeing they had the projector screens up with tape up there. And so they were bringing the guys in, and sometimes they were walking them through film tape, like you've seen on maybe some of the Hard Knock stuff, where they bring a prospect in and grill them on some tape or show tape and ask them questions. They had board work in there. So they had whiteboards. So they're having guys do whiteboards. And so walked past that hall and saw in there of what they were doing. So it was interesting to hear some of the guys who had actual formal interviews and talk to them a little bit about what that was. I'll get into that in a second. And so first I'm going to dive into the linebackers, and I'll use this to answer Jake's question. Can you explain what type of linebacker will Mike Sam players the 49ers look for, i.e. body types, play style? So, and I've been talking about this with Steph and Wayne. The 49ers, they draft very much on player write-ups and metrics that they have for different positions. If you look at, like, one thing I've talked to these guys about is when you look at defensive linemen, they value length really, really strongly from their defensive linemen. 3 techniques, defensive ends, they've got to have length. Why? You go back to the Solomon Thomas pick. Solomon Thomas had a lot of production. They loved him as a character person. They loved him from a lot of athletic measurables. He was meant to be somebody who could play base downs or defensive end on base downs, and then move inside to a 3 technique on pass rushing downs, like your Eric Armstead, what ended up being Eric Armstead. The problem was that he didn't have the arm length. He was consistently swallowed up. And so he couldn't get into the offensive linemen before they got their hands on him. And so what they have begun to do is you look at all of their defensive linemen that they pick early, they all have really good arm length. So Nick Bosa has good arm length. Micah Williams had extremely good arm length. Eric Armstead, who they kept around for a long time, had really good arm length. Alfred Collins, really good arm length. These are the kinds of guys that they pick at defensive line, and it comes from some of their scars of players that didn't work out. So when they look for a will, the number one trait is going to be closing speed, that 10-yard split closing speed. They want guys to get out by the numbers and then collapse on anything in the flat to the hash. So they really want guys who can gain depth and then attack and collapse and collapse the depth really quickly. That's for their will. Their mics, they want more side to side movement. They want more lateral movement. They want guys to get from hash to hash and cover in those areas, and then be able to flip their hips and pick up crossers. That's what they really want from their mics and guys that have a quick trigger to go and play with their hair on fire and go hit. So, their mic types don't generally have quite as much speed, but they're still really similar. So they treat them mostly the same. The mic, they want a little bit bigger, they want a little bit better hips, but they really like this type for all of their linebackers now, Mike, Will, and Sam. But as far as will linebackers, I think, those real speed demon guys that they love at linebacker, there's a couple guys here that have really shown out. First guy I noticed was Kyle Lewis from Pittsburgh. He's a linebacker who really flashed in a number of team reps and in some pass coverage reps on running backs. Shows really good closing speed, really good burst, recognition, and a fast trigger. Somebody that is going to be really interesting to see as this draft process works out, where he starts to slot. They really like their linebackers in the third to fourth, fifth rounds. They don't like to spend early draft picks on linebackers. They're mid-round guys. I think he's somebody right now who makes sense there. Another kid who really just lit up the field today was Xavier Sori from Arkansas, linebacker. He had a number of splash plays that really showed off that fast trigger, violent at the point of attack, suddenness, aggressiveness to fill. He absolutely stonewalled, pancake, blew up, whatever you want to call one of the offensive linemen today in a rep. I mean, just destroyed the guy, put him on the ground in 11 on 11s on a run. So Xavier Sori is somebody who I think really fits their type. Those are the two I think metrics wise fit their types. Now, a guy that's interesting, I don't know if he has the speed, but he is just fascinating. I think he'd be a very solid headsy pick. Is Bryce Bocher from Oregon? He's more the mic I think that they have, but he's somebody that I think can really fit kind of what they're looking for in that. And so there's a lot of stuff there. I will say, Quiffle, the drills actually did look way better in person than they do on TV. A lot of the individual drills are not that exciting. So there's a lot where we would sit and talk while they're going through the individual drills. But the individual one-on-ones, a lot of them were really exciting, especially the O-line, D-line one-on-ones. It's always fireworks. There was a lot of jawing. You probably couldn't see it and hear it from the broadcast, but there was a lot of energy of trash talking and jawing going back and forth between the lines. They were getting really competitive today. You love to see that kind of stuff start coming out and it started to be like our side versus your side, and everybody on the offensive line is rooting on their guys, everyone on the defensive line, and they're getting chippy. It was a lot of fun. Speaking of offensive line, a guy that has continued to just really blow the doors off this Senior Bowl that I just worry is going to move himself out of range of the 49ers is Jennings Dunker from Iowa. He's a tackle. He's played a number of interior spots here at the Senior Bowl, showing that he can move to guard. There's concern about his arm length for tackle, and so he's getting snaps at guard, but also showing that he can play tackle. He is an absolute beast. He's an aura. The kid has got massive tree trunks for legs. He was at the media day today, and most of these guys are wearing at least like their sweats and stuff and their jerseys and looking mostly presentable. Jennings was there. He had his black hoodie on. his gym shorts that came only halfway up his leg or halfway down his leg. He's got the big red hair mullet, big mustache. I put a picture of him that I took on my X account. He's an aura. I mean, you think about pairing this guy with George Kittle, the other Iowa guy on the team. It just this is would be one of the funnest. I mean, this would be like 1992 pro wrestling kind of characters being out there. It would just be awesome. But he has played phenomenally well here. He is holding up extremely well at tackle in the one-on-ones and at guard. He's not losing hardly any reps. He's reminding you it's not quite as dominant as Gray Zabel was here last year, but it's getting close. He is playing phenomenally well here this week, and is somebody that you would just love to have in that 49ers offensive line room. So he's really looking good out there. He has become a massive draft crush. Another draft crush that is formed during this week and really started the week before as I was diving into the tape is Jake Slaughter, center from Florida. He had another really strong day. Continues to impress in the interviews. I was able to interview him for a couple minutes. I posted that on my X this morning and asked him about scheme stuff, how they handle that, how he would handle the transition to handling some of that stuff in the NFL. He talked about how he loves the chess match, loves the X's and O's side of it from the center position, and he's played very, very well here. He's anchoring. One thing that absolutely stands out with him is he does not get beat by stunts in games. He recognizes them so quickly, and when it's a slide to the right side, he identifies when these guys are running these stunts in these games, and he hands off guys and he picks up the stunter almost every time. And it's extremely impressive to watch him do that in real time. So somebody I think would really be good to bring in, could play guard and also be the understudy to take over for Jake Brendel. I think he would in the end be a big upgrade over Jake Brendel. Another guy who had a really strong day. It was strong yesterday, and then he really had a number of good reps today. Is Willis Carver, tackle from Washington. He's really looked good out here. Had just a lot of really solid reps against some good defensive players. You know, the lines here have been extremely competitive, and there's moments where one will look really good, and then you have guys that bounce back, and they've been a lot of back and forth. But Willis Carver's looking really good, a prospect I really like from today. Another kid, interior offensive lineman from Boise State, Cage Casey, really had a strong day. He again was good in the individuals and in team. You know, sometimes guys will do really well in the individuals and they don't do as well in team, because we've seen that in years past where a guy will have a few really good reps in individual, then you get into team and it seems like you can't run behind them at all. Like when they're doing the team move the ball periods and they're trying to run the ball, and it's like every time they're getting stuffed because they can't work the combos and stuff. Well, he's not one of those guys. Cage Casey has really shown out well. From Boise State, another kid, interior offensive lineman from Georgia Tech, Keelan Rutledge. Keelan Rutledge he's a hog. He's shown a lot of power, a lot of burst, quick feet, good hands. I think that's what I wrote mainly here about Keelan Rutledge. Yeah, quick feet, good hands. Showed some really good inside hand fighting against these defensive linemen. So I think there's a number of good opportunities for the interior offensive line. They're going to have to pick somebody. They're not going to roll into next year with just Nick Zakel or Connor Colby. They need to either sign somebody in free agency or go in the draft. And I doubt they're going to sign anybody in free agency. They don't do that. So, I mean, the only guy I think is a possibility in free agency is Tyler Linderbaum. And so I think, you know, guard is something that they're going to have to address, and they're going to look for a day one starter there. And I think a number of these guys, you know, Jennings, Jake Slaughter, Willis Carver, Cage Casey, Keelan Rutledge, I think all these guys have the potential to be that and step in there and be a day one starter for them. I have Jennings as my number one guy, Jake Slaughter is number two, and then the next three are we'll have to see as you look at the tape and kind of how some of their measurables come out. But I think all of those guys fit that bill. So with that, we'll get to another major area that I think they need to inject some youth. Honey, I'm not as sunburned as it looks. My wife is in here. She's like, please go buy some sunscreen. I will buy some sunscreen for tomorrow, but I'm not as sunburned as it looks. I'm really not. Everyone looks like thinks I look like a tomato up in here, but some edge players that I think when you look at the edge players coming out here, there's a number of just pure speed rushers. The last year was a lot of tweener kind of types. That there was a number of guys who could play edge, like a Shamar Stewart. He was not a true edge, where they were like these big edge players, and Micah Williams same way. When you look at this draft class, I think there's a lot of pure speed rushers here, and some guys that really are intriguing. I don't know if they would spend a first round pick on him because I think this guy that I'm going to talk about first. I think he's going to be gone in the first round. Late first round is I think where most people are targeting him. He may be moving himself up into the 20 to 28 range. It's TJ Parker from Clemson. He is insanely fast, insanely bursty. He recorded the fastest GPS time among all defensive ends yesterday, of all defensive linemen, and he hit almost 15 miles an hour. So to put that in perspective, that's the same speed that matches Christian McCaffrey's top speed, I think, throughout much of this season. I think it was up to week 16. Christian McCaffrey's highest top speed that he'd hit all by that point was 15 miles an hour, and so that's where he's at as a defensive end, and he shows you that the short area burst that he has there. So really interesting prospect. You talk about pairing him with Michael and Nick Bosa, and that becomes really intriguing, really fascinating to be that specialist speed rusher. And I don't know if they're going to spend a first round pick on somebody who's kind of that specialist, but I believe he brings more to the table as far as base down stuff than Bryce Huff. Saw him absolutely collapse the edge on some tight ends during the run game. So it's a really interesting prospect there. Just it's going to turn out to what kind of value and where are they looking for in that role. Another kid who extremely bursty, a lot of length and range, some great long arm moves. Nadame Tucker from Western Michigan. Another speed rusher, a lot of burst, great quick first step. I think somebody that if you're looking for that same thing, but in the later rounds, that's definitely going to be an option that's there. Somebody they should really do their homework on. Another kid almost looks like a clone of Nadame is Vincent Anthony from Duke. Incredible length. This is just a lengthy guy. So those are also reasons I put these guys on here is because I think they fit the metrics of what the 49ers want from their defensive ends. They want these guys with length. And so both those guys, that'd be Nadame Tucker and Vincent Anthony, you can see they got really good length. Another kid that's really shown out, Zion Young from Missouri, and then Gabe Yakus from Illinois. I think both those guys, they have a real potential as speed rushers. That's definitely their game is speed. So those are some prospects that we're looking at from there to be watching as we go forward into the next kind of down the stretch here. So that covers a lot of the line play, front seven play. I'm gonna get a quick drink. Some lemonade helps with the voice. But moved on to I watched a lot of tight ends today because obviously there's questions about whether or not George Kittle will come back and be at full strength in the first part of the year. It will be October, November. We don't know, and so there is a big hole there at tight end. Jake Tonjes has shown some really good receiving skills, but very subpar blocking skills. Luke Farrell has shown not great receiving skills, not great blocking skills, but he has a big contract. So, I think that they're gonna dive into tight end in this draft, especially because of some of the prospects that are here. I don't know how high he's climbing, but one kid that is extremely intriguing it just looks like an absolute prototypical stud of a tight end. And he has some connection to the 49ers. That is one Roush from Stanford. He is a blocking tight end first. We got to talk with him. All four of us who've been together here, we were able to talk with him for 5 to 10 minutes today during the media day. Great kid, great head on his shoulders. He loves blocking. Thinks it's incredible. Loves run blocking. Takes pride in it. He's from Stanford. I asked him if he had any classes with John Lynch. Just it was more of a joke, because Solomon Thomas was infamously picked because he had a class with John Lynch at Stanford, and so John fell in love with him there in that class. He's a no, but he did say that John Lynch does come to a number of their practices during the year. So Lynch has been able to see this kid for a while. I think he's on their radar. He did have a formal interview with the 49ers. He did some board work. Now I started asking him if, they were going over some of the wordy plays and some of that, if it was trying to, figure out what they, if he has the retention for all their stuff. Cause that's one thing they'll put guys through is they'll run them through exercises to see how well can you retain our offense and stuff. It wasn't that. He said they weren't talking about our offense at all. So that tells me that what they were looking at was how does he see the game, and how does he see, his role in the blocking. So very intriguing, very interesting pick. The underrated part of his game is the receiving end, because they did not have a dynamic passing attack there at Stanford. He's not seen as a receiver, but he has absolutely shown the receiving skills. I think he's shown the best receiving skills of any of the tight ends here. Fascinatingly enough, we were talking about that most of the day. We're keeping our eyes on him. While we're sitting there, Sam Acho shows up, sits down next to us. He's talking with his group of people, and the guy, he's like, the kid that I'm most interested in right here is this Sam Roche from Stanford. I think he's an underrated receiver. He's a kid that is an incredible blocker. I'm really excited to watch this kid. And we were sitting there like, well, there it is. We've also seen it. So, and that's former linebacker Sam Acho, which was a little weird. We're like, hey Sam, but Sam Roush really is an intriguing prospect. I would do a backflip if the 49ers picked him in the second round. I think he is a slam dunk of a pick. Super smooth in his route running, catches with his hands, really good hands, gets open, finds way to get open, runs precise routes. Really, really, really interesting prospect. And like I said, great kid, great head on his shoulder, super smart, really well spoken. Would absolutely love this kid with the 49ers. A couple guys that I think also are interesting prospects with the tight ends. It's a good tight end group here. Is Nate Borkersher from Wisconsin. These guys, they all look very similar. I just kind of I have him ranked this way. I think Nate has done really well as well. He hasn't been quite the blocker that Sam has been, but he's a good receiving tight end, and there's a lot of room to grow there. There's a lot of willingness to block too, and you can see he takes pride in it. I think somebody who needs to work more on the receiving side, but is a better blocker, is John Michael Gillenberg from Wyoming. So he's another really interesting tight end prospect. But man, it's really Sam. And we asked him, like, who do you look up to as far as and model your game after as far as tight ends? And he said it was George Kittle and Sam Laporta. Like, those are the two guys that, and I get it. Like, a lot of guys are going to say that, but he's not saying. But it was interesting about Sam Laporta. He said, I think Sam Laporta is very underrated for his blocking. He's like, he's always keeping his line square. He takes good angles. Like, you can tell the kid has studied Sam Laporta as a blocker. So, really fascinating there. I think those three guys, but Sam Roush is far and ahead the lead on it. He's a I mean, he's got the body to be a dominant tight end. He's like 6'4", 6'5". I want to say, I mean, he's a tall dude. At my height, I'm 5'8". Everybody looks tall after a certain point, but tall, solid, thick body. He is NFL ready. He looks like an NFL tight end and a really good NFL tight end. So and then I think a couple receivers that the 49ers are going to look real hard at and think really hard about receiver in the first round. You Brandon Ayuk left the team. I know we don't want to invest another first round pick in receiver, but here we are because one of our former first round picks at receiver decided to just quit on the team. So you're left with a position where you got to go invest again. So I think two guys that would be very interesting there, and I think you're going to have to spend a first to go get them. They're sitting there. They're ranked right at the end of the first round is where a lot of people are having them, or early second, and I think they're moving up. Is one Malachi Fields. Malachi Fields had a really good day today. He's explosive, bursty, smooth in and out of his cuts, and he made the best catch we've seen all week. It was on a corner post, so they were running a slide concept, and he runs like he's running a corner, and then he breaks to the post. He beat the safety. The ball was not a good ball. They let him way too far downfield. He still adjusted, dove, made the catch over his shoulder. Is absolutely. I mean, the stadium went wild. I'm sure there's going to be clips of it circulating on social media. Probably already is. But it was a truly impressive catch. But it wasn't just that catch. It was the way he set up the route, the way he's operated in the one-on-ones, in the 7-on-7s, in the 11-on-11, in running his routes, really smooth in and out of his cuts. Looks like he could be a really dynamic receiver going forward. So Malachi Fields, really impressive today. And then the other guy, I've talked about him a couple times before, and he just continued to have another strong day, was Jacoby Lane from USC. He is the biggest as far as height receiver that's here. He's 6'4". He is thicker than he looks. He's so tall. He looks thin, but he's got a build very similar. Standing next to him and across from him, talking to him, he reminded me more of Juwan Jennings than necessarily a really, really thin guy. He kind of looks thinner because he's got really long arms and he's got really long legs. He's all arms and legs. But he's not nearly as slight as you would think. He's a lot thicker than you'd imagine. And he doesn't look like every other receiver running routes because he's so long, and his legs he's got such a long stride. It reminds you of Brandon Ayuk with the long striding, and it just seems like he never really chops down, and he just kind of goes, and then he turns, and the way he runs, it reminds me of that a little bit. So it's a little bit unconventional, but dude absolutely cooked on a few routes, not in one-on-ones, in straight 11-on-11, and some one-on-ones. Big catch radius, strong hands, goes and high points the ball, caught some passes that were not good throws. He fits a lot of what the 49ers like from their receivers. The question about him and his draft stock has been his 40 time. I will tell you, the game tape and what we see on the field says he's got more than enough game speed to win deep. I don't really care about the 40 at this point, because he's showing he can win deep on the field. And so it doesn't really matter if his 40, like people say, well, he can't win deep. Well, you have years of tape showing that he can win deep and that he can win over the top. He understands leverage. He understands where to put his body. He's a young kid. Again, seems like he's got a real good head on his shoulders. A lot of these guys, they are coached on how to deal with people, jokers like us, but really exciting prospect that is there. So that is kind of how things are going here at the Senior Bowl on the second day. We're going to have the third day tomorrow. We'll see if there's any people who drop off, who feel like they've shown up and done enough to really make their mark here. I will say there's somebody I'm forgetting that I need to point out. And I just want to double check I have the right one here. And that is defensive tackle Hunter Lee from Texas Tech. That kid has really shown out. Be an interesting pick, because they invested in 2 defensive tackles, but they need more. Jordan Elliott, I don't think they're going to bring back. I think they want to get young at defensive tackle and stay young at defensive tackle. So somebody that I think would be really interesting. I just don't know where he's going to go because this kid has been blowing everybody up. He absolutely dominated some reps. Is one Lee Hunter, not Hunter Lee, sorry, Lee Hunter. That's the way they have the names on here. Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. Keep an eye on that guy as things go. But there is your rundown from today. If you have any more questions, you can always email me, jonnydelsfootballacademy at gmail.com. DM me on X. I don't always get them through because sometimes it doesn't tell me the notifications come through. But when I see it, I'll respond. But thanks for joining me tonight, guys. I'm going to go hit the hay, recoup for tomorrow. But until tomorrow, because we will go live tomorrow, probably similar time, most likely. Until tomorrow, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, go Niners.